Hello, everybody, and welcome to Digital Futures. My name is Michael. I'm a member of the team. And tonight, from my perspective, I have the pleasure of moderating this session in honor of Behnaz Farahi on the occasion of her Digital Futures Critical Practice Award 2025. As you know, of course, Behnaz is assistant professor and director of the Critical Matter Group at the MIT Media Lab and holds the inaugural Morningside Professorship of Design there as well. I will give a very quick overview over Behnaz's sort of career and in the awards, and then hand it over to her. So as you know, at Digital Futures, we have several awards, including international, more cousins, language groups. The Critical Practice Awards has been awarded twice so far. 2024, it went to Yasaman Ismaili at Studio Chahar. And of course, then in 2025, it went to Behnaz. I'll give a quick overview of Behnaz's sort of academic trajectory. Initially, she did architecture degrees in Tehran, went on to UC for the MArch and the PhD in interdisciplinary media arts and practice, was an assistant professor at California State University, Long Beach from 2020 to 2024. And then, of course, since 2024, she's assistant professor at MIT. This is a very brief sort of selection of Behnaz's awards, publications, and exhibitions. I will not read them all or list them all. They are many, but you can see that she has had a very distinguished career already, and we're very pleased to have her here. Also, collections, venues, publications include SIGGRAPH, Ars Electronica, Milan Fashion Week, and many others. I think there's a really interesting quote here. The Critical Matter Group envisions a future for design that goes beyond the mere application of technology, and we may want to come back to that during discussion. One thing left to say for me here is that I really enjoyed the YouTube channel of the Critical Matter Group. Amazing lectures with guests there, so I encourage everyone to check that out. And with that, I hand it over to you, Behnaz.
Thank you so much, Michael. Hello, everyone. First of all, I have to say I'm really honored to receive the Digital Future Critical Practice Award, being recognized by the very community that I care deeply and have been in conversation with for many years is incredibly meaningful and very validating. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second. So a lot has changed for me for the last 2 years. I joined the MIT Media Lab as assistant professor, where I was given the opportunity, but also the challenge of starting a new research group from scratch. And one of the very first questions I had to answer was surprisingly simple. What do I call it? I thought about this quite a lot. Eventually, I came back with 2 words that have followed my work for many years, and that was critical matter. So today, I'd like to talk about what critical matter means, and what it means to think about design as a critical practice that works with both matter and technology. So before I talk about projects, I would like to give a little backgrounds about some of these concepts. And by the way, we are on exactly this location at the MIT Media Lab behind the logo of Critical Matter. So in our research group, we explore the relationships between the human body and the environments, from wearables and the world of the intimate scale of wearables to architecture to public art installation. And through all this work, I've come to believe something. Our materials, our wearables, our technologies and tools are not separate from us. They become extension of our body, extension of our perceptions. They shape how we see and experience the world because we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are through our bodies, which is increasingly mediated through technologies. McLuhan said it so beautifully. We shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. Every device we carry, every surface we touch, every encounter that we have, it changes our perception, how we feel, and how we relate to one another. So the name of our group, Critical Matter, it has double meaning. It refers to both essential material research as well as addressing critical issues of our times. Conventionally, a lot of material research has been informed by latest advances in technology and engineering and science. A lot of time, it's a question of efficiency. Often these approaches are very much separated from social sciences and humanities. But what we're very interested in Critical Matter is to aim to bring these words together, to create innovative work that is grounded in scientific material research while making meaningful social impact. When we use the word critical in Critical Matter, we are drawing partly in the tradition of critical theory. Thinkers from Frankfurt School challenged the idea that technology, media, and culture could ever be neutral. They also question whose interest they serve and what assumptions do they reproduce. Guido called this condition as a spectacle, a world in which our social relationships are increasingly mediated through images. And today, the idea feels so tangible. Our identities, relationships, and experiences are increasingly mediated through social media, algorithms, and now through deepfake and generative AI. How are identities shaped by images and by technologies that reproduce them? And with that, if our identities are increasingly mediated through images, what happens when those images can be generated and manipulated without us? Deepfake make this question so important and so urgent. And here I have to have a big shout out to one of our researcher group team members, Setbul, who's working incredible work on deepfake and images that produce, and it can harm also the communities and the violence that it can take over the bodies. There's a film that, for me, makes this idea even more tangible. This is John Carpenter's They Live. In the movie, you're seeing the actor puts a pair of sunglasses, spatial glasses, that suddenly he can see what is normally is invisible. Advertisements reveal hidden messages, exposing the structure of power and consumption beneath every images. What fascinated me in this is the role of glasses. They don't just give him more information, they actually give him a critical lens. This really made me wonder, what if technology could help us see what's normally remain invisible? What if design itself could become a critical lens? Because perception is never neutral. Similar to technology, perception is a lens through which we encounter the world, and design participate in shaping that relationship. So for us, critical practice is not only about criticizing technology, but actually making things that allow us to perceive the worlds differently, question assumptions, and imagine other possibilities. And here, that's why we are very much interested in the notion of critical making as a way of thinking through making. For us, critique cannot remain only discursive. We think through making. Often it starts with the what-if questions. What if society were otherwise? What if matter behaves differently? So critique in this case is acting as a catalyst for imagining or reimagining social and technological possibilities. When we ask these questions, we keep coming back to the body that Michael also mentioned in the introduction, because technologies aren't experienced in the abstract ways. We encounter them through our bodies. We often think about intelligence as something that happens in our mind, is a concept, is a language, is an idea. But have you ever entered to a room or to a space and you felt differently? Have you noticed that your body sometimes responds to something before your mind even catches up? So our body knows things before we necessarily have words to describe them. And for us, it is really important, the starting points. Intelligence and emotion are not only linguistic, they are embodied and they are material. And this brings me to the other words in our name, matter. Our understanding of matter has been deeply influenced by philosophy of new materialism. I was very fortunate to be a student of Manuel de Landa at USC, where I was exposed to these ideas, to see matter as forces, tendencies, and capacities that can participate in production of form and behavior. So body is really crucial for us, in both in terms of its materiality, that also holds psychological as well as a ground for social relations. So with these three, we explore these three interconnected themes in our research group: social, material, and psychological. And with this introduction, I'd like to share a few projects that have been done in our group, but also from my previous creative practice. So I start with materials. We explore novel materials with ecological sensibility. We investigate robotic fabrication, computational design as a pathway toward biodegradable, bio-inspired material processes. We wonder, what if wearables or textile were not manufactured somewhere in the distant factories, but drawn directly on the human body? What if robots could weave custom-fit intelligent textile without generating waste? What if we build three-dimensional structure by programming invisible electrostatic fields? So currently in the lab, we are exploring this unbodied robotic fabrication. We are exploring different methods, custom-made fabrication, to produce materials from biodegradable, low-temperature thermoplastics. We're also experimenting with thinking about waste as a resource. For instance, what if you can use a strand of hair that goes to waste as a material for producing novel material membrane using electrospinning process? This is the project that we also presented at SIGGRAPH last month, electrospinning membrane structure using algae-based as well as keratin from hair. Actually, the current version of this work, we are expanding waste from human hair to excessive seaweed from our environment, algae. We scale up these projects to a scale up architecture to see how we can produce pavilions and architectural scale installation made from alginate using electrospinning process. And you see Sergio inside this installation. On the psychological aspects of our work, we investigate how design can support psychological well-being, fostering awareness, reflection, and more attuned relationship with our inner states. So initially, you're seeing Ray experimenting with fluid vibrations. We produce this installation, which consists of a bowl holding water, and it's vibrating through transducers. The transducer receives signal from EEG sensors, and it's really exploring the relationship between mind and matter. In this video that you're seeing the EEG sensor that captured the brain activity and meditation level from the Buddhist monk meditating. As he's meditating and his mind is getting calmer, you're seeing the reflections of the light in this space is get calmer as well. So we ask, how can we create experiences that help us to feel more connected to ourselves, to our inner peace, but also to our environments? So if you're the audience in the room, you're witnessing someone's meditating, you're literally swimming in the Buddhist monk's brain. And I'm very excited to share that this project was presented at the SIGGRAPH last month, and we won the best art paper awards for this project, which was truly exciting. On the social end, I've been really fascinated by the ways we connect to one another. One example of such idea is the gaze, exploring that idea of the gaze, not from just neuroscience or cognitive science, but also from critical feminist perspective. What does it mean to observe and to be observed? And how the power is negotiated through the simple act of looking. What if you could feel someone else's gaze in your body? This is Caress of the Gaze, which is a cape that uses the gaze or gaze tracking and a smart material to respond to the onlooker's gaze. So basically beneath the 3D printed piece, there's a very small camera that can detect where the people are looking. And based on where they're looking, the garment moves on the wearer's body. So if you're the wearer, you can notice which part of your body is being looked at because you feel the haptic pressure on your body. And if you're the onlooker, you know that your action is being noticed. So this really potentially change social interaction. This work also built on the work and inspired by the work of thinkers such as John Berger's Ways of Seeing, as well as Laura Mulvey, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, to really question the question of the male gaze. Thinking about fashion, I was approached by a fashion house to do an installation for the Milan Fashion Week. Fashion is fascinating medium for production of culture. Yet we all know fashion has been complicit within the tradition of female objectification and sexual harassment. But what if we were to subvert this through the power of the gaze? So Returning the Gaze is a robotic installation where in the middle of the installation, the female model wearing a space-like suit, her eyes, the close-up of her eyes is captured and is streamed and extended through 4 robotic arms that showing her eyes gazing back, looking back at the audience. The aim is to sow anxiety within this structure to make the audience feel uncanny by being constantly watched. And also to create sort of awareness about our disturbing biases that it's so deeply rooted within our subconsciousness. Moving from fashion to urban scale. Give me a second. I do want to make sure that, sorry. Yeah. Moving away from fashion to urban scale, what if public buildings could share our dreams and fears? We were incredibly lucky to be given an opportunity to do a project and basically taking over the MIT Dome for 3 nights last year. Gaze to the Star is a project, it's a larger scale public art, participatory arts projects that transform the iconic MIT Great Dome into emotional interface, a canvas for dreams, fears, and shared humanities. When you enter to this sensory pod, you take a seat, you lean your forehead against the pod, you look inside Infinity Room. the experience starts. You will be given one of the 4 themes to talk about: dreaming, longing, feeling, and struggling. You hear some stories, and then AI asks you a question. For instance, what are you longing for? Or what do you dream of becoming? The machine responds to your answers using OpenAI API, and then ask you a follow-up question to better understand your story. We collect the transcriptions of all the stories. We summarize that to 10 to 12 words, and then we encode these messages inside every given iris. Over 3 nights, we projected 200 eyes and the stories that they shared onto the MIT Dome. These stories weren't just stories of success of MIT community, but actually stories of loss, grief, stress, and pain. As people walk into the city, they spot these big, massive eyes. They could see these eyes, and if they were in the yard, they were seeing the QR code, they could go to the website, and they could decode what every story, what every eye is about to share. So every eye becomes constellation yet to be discovered, or the story to be discovered under every eye. So we also really think about ways that urban scales can become a canvas for sharing stories, how we can anthropomorphize the buildings as the body. So city become a living body in this case, by projecting this very much close up of people's eyes and their stories. The buildings and the city become the body for the community. So this time, instead of everyone looking at MIT building look back at the city of Boston and sharing the story of the community. The afterlife of the project was also interesting. If you go to gatetothestar.com, we collected all these stories. We made an interactive data visualization that find invisible patterns between all the stories that have shared. These are stories that we didn't anticipate in the beginning, the stories of community and connection, fear of academic life or stress of academic life, inner peace. Some of these stories start to emerge as we find common patterns between all the stories. We really think about this collective empathy, stories that bring us all together. After all the fears, all the stress is communal. We all experience it. And experiences like this would allow us to really explore how public art and also AI can foster a form of civic empathy and reminding us that we are all together and we feel things together. Like many other projects, we built this project from design and fabrication of the sensory pods to the surrounding environments, to all the software parts, with the incredible team of graduate and undergraduate students at the Critical Matter Group. We work hard together to make this possible. It's incredible environment, and maybe while this video is running in the background, I can talk about some of the experiences that I personally have in Media Lab. It's incredible opportunity to work with such talented group of researchers, from graduates, visiting students to undergrads that work really hard. It's very inspiring, and the energy is contagious to see how everyone devotes themselves when we are having these common goals of producing something. So it is an incredible opportunity to be at Media Lab at large, but also in our research group currently. I'm extremely grateful for the wonderful energy that every single person brings on board. We have a variety of students coming from different backgrounds, the team members coming from art, science, architecture, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. And it is a very unique place to bring this interdisciplinary way of thinking and being all together and make these projects only possible because we have that opportunity. In our lab, sorry, let me make the sound. In our lab, we explore how intelligence can be extended into materials itself through computational textile, through responsive materials, through interfaces that sits very close against your skin. When a garment, for instance, feels someone else's gaze, the relationship between the body and environment changes. When a public installation translates thousands of eyes and stories, emotional expressions, which is usually private and individual, become collective. I mentioned that I'm extremely grateful for all of our team members, currently our graduate students, Setbiul, Ray, Sergio, Justin, Yushang, Jake, Annie, Avantika, doing incredible work to make all of this possible. But all of our undergrads and past members were the one that actually make a lot of these projects possible. And to wrap up, I want to say that for us, the role of design is to challenge ways of seeing. I'm excited to explore how computational designs and technology could be used not as an end itself, but as a way of addressing larger social and cultural challenges of our time. Not to merely conform, but to ask, to provoke, to empower, and hopefully to imagine a different future. This is really what critical matter means to me, using material and technology, not simply as a tool, but as a critical lens, as a way of seeing, sensing, and imagining the world otherwise. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to our conversation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Behnaz, for this wonderful, fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to discussion. Who wants to kick it off?
Maybe I could say something, Michal. I mean, first of all, congratulations, Behnaz. Wonderful work. Great team. And I think it's really kind of interesting that the Media Lab is now focusing on these kind of deep, very topical questions. You know, I think that if I were to think of one of the most important, let's say, artists, I mean, critical commentators in the world, it would be Banksy. And Banksy is kind of interesting because, you know, what you're doing is focusing on the gaze and the gaze and the lens by which we look at the world. But what makes Banksy interesting is that he himself is actually invisible in some senses, or at least he's presented himself in a certain sort of way as a kind of critique of things. And you know, it strikes me in some senses that what is invisible today, or rather, the way in which we are often controlled, without realizing it, is by precisely these invisible forces. I think of Louis Althusser, the notion of ideological state apparatus. He contrasts, you know, the repressive state apparatus. We can see that, you know, the kind of military or the police or whatever controlling us, but ideological state apparatus is more insidious because you cannot see it, and yet your thought is controlled. And it strikes me that we're actually, the world is getting more dangerously in that situation as a result of some of the technology. Some of the technology is monitoring what we're doing. A lot of it is controlled by certain individuals who are have techniques of shadow banning and so on of critical voices. In other words, the kind of people that we have been giving our awards to, like A.L. Weissman, his group, Forensic Architecture Group at Goldsmith in London, these are finding themselves even more under attack in this kind of highly technological world in which we operate, whereby control of these media platforms is then in the hand of the few, and you are penalized if you don't buy into a certain sort of worldview. So I'm just wondering to what extent you can that idea of invisible control, which I think it was kind of there in that beautiful movie clip of the guy putting on his glasses, and seeing the world in a different sort of way. To what extent that is really a kind of so topical in terms of our time. It's precisely the moment where we really need to pick up on that legacy of, say, May 68, of Guy Debord, of the spectacle, and so on. It makes it very, very relevant. So I'm just more kind of commentary than anything else, but I think it's very refreshing that you're looking at that, and I would say that is ever more pressing in our contemporary technological horizon to keep that critical dimension alive, because I think in many areas it's been shut down. Maybe I just kind of float that idea out there as a kind of for you to comment on.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I mean, it is incredible moment in the history. It's both exciting and also to some extent, it is terrifying, because the question of governance and who owns the data, how we are getting nudged or manipulated becomes so integrated within these tools. It is, we are like fish in a tank that we are unable to even see the water, the presence of the water. I mean, we are within these environments where we cannot really see and distinguish how we are being manipulated or nudged in different directions. So it definitely, more than ever, you need that critical lens, those glasses that allow us to see these hidden comments, to see how are we guided, how the content is produced. I mean, and it's going to be incredibly hard. I mean, I that's why I think the work that Seth Buell in my group is doing with the deep fake is incredibly powerful, because the truth is the distinction between reality and what is real and what's not real more than ever is getting blurry. And within that context, to have that critical lens to be able to see things through is more than ever important. I also think that from very much personal interest in my work related to emotion and affect, and how computation and technology can address the notion of affect and emotion, is incredibly important to reflect in this critical lens. Harvard study has shown that more than ever, any of our chatbots are used for therapeutic purposes rather than using for producing images or texts. So this is already telling as well. So these machines are entering into our emotional regulation landscape. So how can we have the critical lens to also understand where these chatbots, where this synthetic artificial system is taking us next? So again, for us, is this question of these chatbots are supporting us or are they manipulating us? The question of manipulation is also fascinating, because we already manipulated. I mean, manipulation is any conversation with any other entity. So if you have it with another person or with another artificial system, you're already being manipulated. Sorry, I'm going to so many different branches, but your question really unpacks so much for me. I have to say that we are working on a big project called Emotion Machine, which is going to take place in February at MIT Museum, which we are very excited, which is really addressing this question of manipulation versus supporting using AI into emotional landscape of our psychological being.
Thank you.
Well, maybe one thing I could contribute here is also a bit of a more on the side of a commentary, like a small anecdote. But it strikes me because we had well, we didn't have Chantal Mouffe on, but we had Joseph Bedford last year who did a session on Chantal Mouffe. I had worked with Chantal a couple of years ago, and it was she has this notion, if I remember correctly, where she says from like, let's say she addresses sort of the artistic perspective, where she says that all art is political because it makes certain, I suppose it makes certain implicit assumptions which cannot be but political. But then she says not all art is critical, and she gets at this notion of criticality or critique. But for her, I think that is more of an intentional thing, and that's also fine. And I think there's an overlap, but I think the more probably to me actually, and I would assume that that is also perhaps the criticality or the critique that you're putting forth, is that the matter is already in itself critical. It's in its capacity to affect and be affected, or let's say in its almost like cognitive vibrancy. And it is more so that we find ways of recognizing this capacity of being critical in the matter or in its assemblages, and that we sort of elicit that or facilitate that, right? And that's, I think, the notion of criticality, which really interests me, and which is a bit less sort of intentional, but more so has more, I think, to do with the recognition of something that is already there, already happening, but under certain circumstances, we may be sort of blind almost to its effects or to its capacity. So that's something, a perspective that really interests me a lot. And I think also if we invoke someone like Karen Barad, I think who's also implicit here, sort of very present in this discussion, that she has this kind of critique of critique, right? Whereas that sort of more classical notion of critique is a view from the outside almost, is like more, it ignores the way that we are already implicit in the assemblage, I think, for her. Anyway, I'll leave it there. It's more of a commentary, but I think that's, I suppose, what I see here as criticality or critique, if that's along your lines in a way.
Thank you, Michael. I think it is interesting because I think most people just take the simplistic view toward, okay, this is material, right? Like material as material doesn't mean much. A lot of people still think about materials as something that is passive, that intelligence exists in the creator's mind. Me as a designer, master genius, I have an idea in my mind, and then I insert my intelligence over matter and make the matter to follow what I have in mind. But I think what you're pointing out is exactly what I am really also fascinated and inspired by these other ways of thinking about matter, not in terms of causation, but in terms of how matter can cause is about affect, is about being affected. So I absolutely think that this is really important distinction. Is less about seeing materials as passive and innate, but actually active in terms of participation in events. So when we are seeing, and I think one of the things that I am really inspired by the work of Manuel de Landa is that he really sees history as the history of material processes. How things evolved are material processes. And in this, we have to say, this is both social, technological, and geological. So it's not only we are talking about matter in terms of matter of geological substances, but it could be matter in terms of social relations, in terms of technological advancements. So we should also see those as gradients of matter and how they evolve and how they change and how they affect us. In other words, I think what I'm really also fascinated in this is that the history could be seen, if you see it this way, and you're seeing materials critical because they enter into partnership to define where we're going next. So we are no longer, I mean, this would really also change the human exceptionalism, because we are no longer just this amazing individual genius masterminds that we have intelligence in our head, but actually our intelligence is distributed to ecological intelligence and material intelligence and all these other forms of intelligence that exist around us. So it really changes the way that we're looking at matter. So in critical matter, we really give so much emphasis on trying to partner with materials, material processes, with technologies, and not to insert what we want as designers and makers, but actually enter to a partnership by learning through doing, by engaging with materials in a different and radically new ways.
Yeah, fantastic. Completely agree. I think that's wonderful. Thanks, Behnaz. Yeah.
But can I just
Do we have
follow
more
up?
questions?
Yeah, can I just follow up with a comment more generally about architecture? I mean, you know, Digital Futures started off as a platform for architects. I think that's what it was, and it gradually went online, and we expanded in many ways to bring on board people like Michal, who's an unbelievably interesting kind of worker, but as an artist. I think that now we can see that actually there's a broader territory that we can look at, and a lot of the questions are about environmental questions, so much as technical questions and so on. We're broadening out in some sort of way. But at the same time, architecture itself is going through some kind of crisis in a sense. And I think I was want to ask this kind of question, or at least throw out this idea. One of the things I think people don't realize about MIT Media Lab is that it's actually part of the School of Architecture, very invisible in some senses. And many of the people that have been involved in it, people like Neri Oxman, have had a background in architecture. But they've diversified. In many ways, maybe there is still architecture. I mean, that depends on your definition of what architecture is. But in some senses, we're in a kind of crisis at the moment because of the profession itself struggling, and it no doubt will struggle even more in the world of AI. But meanwhile, in MIT, I think in a very progressive way, you are expanding that notion of design. I mean, I think, was it yesterday or something, or the day before, that the Morningside Academy of Design that was refurbished or reconfigured by Liz Diller and her team and so on, actually opened, and what that makes that so significant to me is that it articulates or gives space for a form of inquiry that doesn't come under these kind of labels. I think, to my mind, the most dangerous almost is the kind of the architecture with a capital A thing, which is precluding the possibility of investigations that go beyond the straightforward, building of design of buildings. And so in a way, you have this role as the inaugural Morningside whatever professor or something, which is actually an incredibly interesting moment in history. We are now opening up to the full potentiality that I think we've already seen for some time. I mean, I've been involved in a couple of ADs looking at, for example, NASA, the space industry, the number of architects working in the space industry, designing not only the International Space Station, but many other aspects of the space industry. And then we ourselves, I collaborated with you on this, on the 3D printed body architecture thing, looking at people like Rem D. Koolhaas, who are now designing shoes with a background in architecture. And it seems to me that both architecture itself is both in crisis, but it's also potentially at the moment of a kind of a redefinition that could lead to a kind of explosion of design energies that if we then open up the understanding of what we mean by architecture. And I guess we've yet to see quite what's going to happen at the Morningside Academy of Design. But it's interesting because in some ways it evokes a previous model from the Bauhaus, which architecture itself was never taught. And yet some of the figures that came out of that, of course, they had a huge impact on Cambridge in Boston, with some of the figures coming across from Germany and Walter Gropius, for example, becoming professors at Harvard. But that idea of going back to this kind of melting pot in which, I think that the boundaries between these traditional boundaries between these silos, we call it architecture, we call it, that's all breaking down, and we're getting instead this kind of open-minded space of exploration,
No, I mean, I think that's a perfect observation. By the way, I'm very excited because I am between MIT Media Lab. I have a joint position between Media Lab and Morningside Academy for Design, which is math. So I'm technically a math professor, which is I just love how it sounds. So Morningside Academy for Design is interesting. What happened, because obviously at MIT, there is huge interest, not from just students in architecture or design backgrounds, but overall across the campus, the students who are interested in the notion of design. They're mechanical engineering students or electrical engineering students, but they wanted to get engaged with the question of design. Now, Skylar Tippett set up, he's in architecture department, he set up the minor for students to be able to take design. And with John Oxendorf, they established the Morningside Academy for Design, which is very exciting, incredible opportunity to expand design across campus, not just to architecture students, but across the campus. So we will see what's going to happen with the new building, which a lot of architecture, urban design, other programs going to move in this building, and what kind of interdisciplinary collaboration is going to take place. One thing personally I'm noticing as I'm teaching one semester for Morningside Academy for Design and one semester for Media Lab, one thing I'm noticing when I'm teaching to students that come from across the campus, one thing that is fascinating is that there is interest. MIT is a lot known for technology, obviously, but what is really also interesting to me is to see that the students there just do self-organize themselves to do design initiatives. So, for instance, they arrange runway shows, which is, you would not imagine at MIT students completely without a single faculty. They arrange, and yearly they arrange a gala runway show at MIT Media Lab, 6th floor, and it's incredible to just see that energy, that they're interested in design, they're interested to bring to engage with the design. Some of them, they're completely from science or engineering backgrounds, but yet they're interested to engage with design and art, and that is there is an interest and there is demand there. So I think I agree with you that more than ever now, architecture also it's in a kind of weird but also sweet spot where we have a lot to offer to other fields. I think my group at Media Lab certainly also benefit from the fact that there was a gap for design for so long at Media Lab. So it was filling that gap. A lot of other research groups, again, are heavily engaged with science and engineering and technology. We are all interdisciplinary, but there is a weight into every research group. There are about 25 different research groups in Media Lab, and each of them, they have a slightly different weight, right? We are more design and art oriented. So it is an incredible opportunity to be in that space, but yet be able to unapologetically bring interdisciplinary way of thinking and being into Media Lab. So we'll yet see how Morningside Academy for Design will expand. I'm extremely excited about it, to work with other colleagues such as Skylar and John, and many others, and see how we can really expand the model of Bauhaus, contemporary Bauhaus in MIT.
Maybe it's a very small follow-up question. I mean, also what happens at in Cambridge is that Harvard students and MIT students can take each other's courses, which is kind of remarkable. But the strange thing is that, I mean, as I used to teach there, and if I know it, the Harvard Graduate School of Design is actually kind of based on architecture with a capital A in a very different way to the media, the Morningside thing, absolutely different way. Do you get any feedback from the Harvard students who come across to your group to come and work with you of how they identify with this kind of contrasting different notions. What is architecture? What is design?
Well, I'm not going to tell much, but just to let you know that basically when my courses, they have more Harvard students than MIT students taking the course. So it is incredible to see how much interest it is among Harvard GSC students to our courses at MIT. I think it is an incredible opportunity to be in this city, which is intellectually heavy with universities across the city, with the students that they're thirsty and really have a lot of desire for learning. I personally had incredible experience with GSC students taking my courses. A lot of them, they became visiting students in my lab, working really closely with me and with the other rest of the group. It's very fruitful connections, but it is kind of fascinating to see how many students are taking our courses at Media Lab. And Hiroshi Ishii's group is extremely popular. Same with How to Make by Neil is extremely popular among GSC students.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Gustavo, yes.
Good morning from California, but I just wanted to say thank you very much, Behnaz, for the very comprehensive presentation. It's very exciting listening and hearing what you're doing and how you're building communities. I just wanted to follow up very quickly. I saw you this year at SIGGRAPH in Los Angeles, and I saw some new trends in technology. And I was looking at the art gallery and I reflected you were in the gallery yourself. How do you foresee your research evolving through this critical lens of theory and practice? And then what do you foresee are the kind of the big challenges that you that need to be overcome, and how you're bringing all these pieces together in the lab? Because you showed various different materials, data, AI, materiality, hair, making pavilions. Like, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. And then also, how do you see the role of these blurring lines of kind of identity? I would say gender, and I would say this idea of this old way of identifying a human being, and kind of what new definitions could come out of your research.
Interesting, Gustavo. First of all, good to see you, and thank you for the great question. There's a lot there, so I try to start, see where I go with it. But I see both of your questions somewhat connected. I mean, both of them pointing toward the world where the boundaries are blurring. Either the boundaries are blurring between thinking and making, theory versus practice, or gender binaries, right? Like the question of identity classification and how we can overcome sort of like boundaries that constrain us, but how can we develop these fluid boundaries where one can be merged to another? And I think this is precisely what we are very interested to do in critical matter. And it is challenging. I have to say, it's not that we know exactly, but I believe that if we move in a world where our intention is not to make another box, but actually have a holistic view toward things, that it's not just, if I'm a research group, I have to only work with materials, but I can work with materials and critical ideas together. If I can think about a range of ways that our body connects with one another, but also to ourselves, this is more of a holistic view that already blur the boundaries. Now, I have to say it's also challenging because inherently we want to simplify things. We want to classify them. The human mind is like that. It's easier for us to say, this is male, this is female, this is theory, this is practice. We want to separate things. And the truth also is, when we are practicing to bring theory and practice together, they almost feels like two different muscles. I often these days, I'm trying to finish my book, and I'm trying to keep my mornings for writing. And every day after, like in the summer until noon, I'm working, I'm writing. So I ask all the team members that please, like, I need to focus on writing. And then after noon, I'm in the lab. And I noticed that there's a shift when you're switching from writing to making, to meet with the team, to meet a deadline. We have to execute an idea. It's a very different modality of practice. So yet through practicing this, you can get fluid with those connections between practice and theory, between making and thinking. So it's challenging, but we are inspired to go in that direction. And how we will do that, it's ongoing process, how we develop methodology and get really better with those methodology in doing that, I think is yet to be developed. But thank you, Gustavo. I hope I answered.
Yeah, you did. Just one quick follow-up, and I think Giovanna's going to answer her. She's going to come on next, but you said something interesting when we spoke. You really enjoyed being in the lab, and there was a really wonderful way that you described this type of mentorship or collegial energy that you had in your lab. Can you talk about how that works for you and this creative process that you're encountering?
I don't remember what I exactly told you, but I can try. So I think it's incredible that I think every lab, every design studio, or in any startups, any studio, I would say, probably have different cultures. We see that in Media Lab, every group has a different culture. They govern differently by the PI. They're completely different cultures based on what is their lab culture. I've been extremely fortunate to have a group of students who are, we work so well together. I am really interested to be hands-on with the team, to really think through ideas, to think through the challenges. They have been incredible energy in terms of ideas that they bring on tables, to the point that sometimes we have to slow down because there's so many things that we are doing, and it's just beyond how much we can do, our capacity sometimes. So that energy is really contagious to observe. And I think in general, this is also, I have to say, setting up a lab and working with my team in the group is a different way of being than when I was in LA and I had my own design practice. It's a very different way of being. In this way, we are a team that we work together. At times we have to, shift ideas, we bounce ideas, we inform one another. So it's to me, it's a very different way of being. And this is evolving. Again, we are 2 years young in terms of the research group at Media Lab. So we have to see how it's evolving. But right now, the energy is incredible. Everyone in the team is just absolutely, they're putting their 100% in. And we're excited. We are very excited about what future holds for the group.
Well, I think that's what you said. So thank you very much. And I'm really excited to see what comes next. And your students and MIT are lucky to have you.
Thank you so much, Gustavo.
Giovanna, are you here? Would you like to ask a question, or otherwise we can also read it in terms. It's always good to have the question out there for anyone looking at the recording later on.
Hi everyone, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, Behnaz. Nice to see you. Nice to listen to you today. I guess that I have a question that is more like a part of the inspiration that you bring to me. So I guess that what your passion, your work, and everything that you are developing at MIT with the students are also the lens of our generation. And they are also impacting new generations of children, women, and societies or communities through the curiosity sparked by the questions that you presented today. So what does it mean to you to be on your trajectory at MIT? And how was your journey? And what would you like to say to these curiosity minds that are listening to you today?
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful question. Well, I think I moved here from Iran in 2011. I moved to US, I went to LA, and I was in LA for about 14 years, did my master and PhD, taught in the design department in CSULB, and then I joined here at MIT. So my journey itself was fascinating. I was once inspired by Iranians that they inspired me to go through this journey. People like individual like Nader Tehrani, Mohsen Mustafavi, Farshid Musavi. These people, they really inspired me. They were the one that they gave me hopes that, oh, as an Iranian, as a female, I can also go. I can also do things, and I can also achieve things. So that really fueled my dream. I really think I've been actually working on a big projects for Future Fest. It's all about dreaming. It's all about what do you imagine, about the role of imagination. How do you imagine your future? I think more than ever, we have to design our future. We have to imagine our future. I'm not saying that by imagining those things would manifest on their own. You have to obviously work hard for them. But I also think that just giving a hope and giving a vision about what is that you want to achieve, it would really give a sense of trajectory or direction for the future that you want to cultivate. And for me personally, that was through Iranians who were very much an inspiration for me. No, not only just Iranians, but people like Zaha Hadid, Middle Eastern women who really showed what's possible to be visionary about architecture and design. So I hope that one day I could provide some form of inspiration for those who might think that their geographical locations or their gender assumptions, they constraints them of what they want to do, to know that it's possible to achieve. And the very first step is to imagine, to dream, to foresee what's possible, and don't just constrain those dreams by cultural assumptions that constrains you. So I just hope that everyone could dream big, and I have to sometimes remind myself to keep dreaming big, because it's not that, it's ongoing. It's like every steps you have to dream. You have to find those who inspire you, and I think that's the fuel to take us moving forward.
Yeah, that's completely true. But I also feel, and I guess that is right, that you are that inspiration nowadays. And thank you so much for that, and for being the woman who are inspiring these new minds. Thank you, Behnaz.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any more questions? Otherwise, of course, Behnaz, you've been very generous with your time also today, and it's been a fantastic and really wonderful, inspirational, literally, session.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Anyone? Okay, apparently I don't see any further questions.
There's a question on the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Oh, I could quickly, how do you see responsive materials transforming the relationship between the human body and architectural space in the future? Okay, and address that last.
Yes, I mean, responsive materials and active materials, they have been around for a long time. They certainly can, when you see materials change, morph, change color, change shape, change texture, they affect you. They make you feel certain things inside your body. So they can certainly affect you emotionally. It can certainly change your behaviors. They can predict your behaviors and your needs. I think what my interest personally is not to move away from question of prediction in terms of behavioral prediction, of question of efficiency. So you enter to a room, the light goes on, or temperature of your house is changing based on your needs or your patterns of your behavior. Instead of that, really to see how this material can psychologically affect you. Can they make you reflect more? Can you make you connect more to yourself, to your people around you? What does it mean if responsive materials allow you to feel your loved one's stress level? Those are areas that I am interested. So in other words, responsive materials certainly can affect human body in architecture scale. But the question is how and what are we trying to gain through those interactions, and why are we doing that? So I think those are the deeper questions that when we are working with responsive materials, we should address.
Thank you, Behnaz. Yeah, it's great to get some questions from YouTube also. Because as far as I see, Gustavo, anyone with more questions or otherwise?
No, I was just saying very quickly, Behnaz, it's really great listening and being a part of this, and thank you for accepting this award. I think you really represent excellence, but also I think creativity and an edge that makes I think gives others courage to really reach their dreams and goals. I just wanted to hear if you had any last thoughts, because you are treading on ground that others in the world would say is not only a privilege, but you are living this type of future now. How would you encourage people that are trying to get to not only where their goals are, but your story is really compelling. So are there any words of encouragement you want to give, or anything that you need?
Well, first of all, I want to say again, thank you. This means a lot for me to receive this critical practice awards from the community that I care so much. So it means a lot. I only want to say that, I mean, it's obviously like everyone, I mean, Digital Future have reached communities across the world, which is really inspiring to see. I think I was very much early on engaged with Digital Futures, and to just see how it evolved, how it reached communities, how it reached people's hearts in communities that it's not accessible. It's already incredible. So my message would be for those who watching, who wants to, follow a dream, just to follow your heart, follow what drives you, what makes you excited in the morning to wake up. And if you can find that light and let that light to guide you, it's going to take you a long way. But it's really a question of how you find that light and how to listen to that inner light and let that to guide you. So, and don't let the constraints to stop you, and let that flame to take you to your future. So with that, I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of the day or night. And I want to again thank Digital Future for this incredible award.
Chris mentioned there's actually another question in the chat from Vasco, who's in Bangladesh. I don't know if we got a chance to quickly respond to that before we wrap things up.
Sure.
Do
Is
you
it
want to
already
read
in
it?
the chat? Yeah. Is it? Hold on. Let me see if I can get back to the chat. Everybody. Oh, yeah. 1 second. Oh, okay. Okay. I'll go ahead. When technology becomes capable of sensing, interpreting, and responding to us, are we still the subjects of technological experience? Or are we gradually becoming participants within systems that also shape and produce our perception of reality?
That's a very deep philosophical question. Well, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think if I understand it correctly, I mean, I think I'm more aligned with the notion that we co-evolve with technology. So I never believe that we are passive subjects of technology, or or technology is a passive. You know, we have this superior views that we are the curators of the technology, and technology should just be it's an inferior entity that should follow our demands and rules. I think we are co-evolving. I believe in what Dana Haraway believes in, this symbiosis of the relationship between organic and artificial, between the fact that we are already cyborgs, but not only just cyborg in the relationship that we have with devices, but these devices, these technologies are co-evolving with us, with our needs, and we develop and participate in this co-evolution. So I think it's the whole philosophical discourse on this co-creation, co-evolution, coexistence with technology that I think I align myself more with. Michael, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Behnaz, this is a question and topic I'm super interested in. I wrote a good amount of my PhD on the philosophy of technology in a way. So we could talk about this for a long time. I'm not sure we're gonna necessarily open up that box right now, because I think everyone maybe is gonna have to also attend to some other things now. But Bhaskar, thanks for that question. It's great, and I totally this notion of coevolution, it is so critical and very complex, and I think has such important implications for art, design, architecture, urban, whatever creative practices we can think of. And yeah, and I was fully on board with this notion of we co-evolve with technology. That's exactly it. And we can maybe in some other session we can explore that further. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Maybe
Well, thank you very much.
Actually, yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, Behnaz, for your generosity and for your time, and for actually the words of inspiration. I think that's also really critical for many to hear that and to
Wonderful.
get
well, thank
that.
you. I'm glad to hear that. Sorry, I just had a bad connection, but thank you so much. Thank you, Digital Future teams, and thank you for these wonderful awards.
Thank you. And thank you for being
Thank
such
you
a
all.
wonderful role model for our female students. And I think there are an increasing number of students are now female, the majority, certainly in my school. And to think that, you mentioned Zaha, who is a female figure from the Middle East, and so too you are. And I think that we need these icons. And so thank you for inspiring this younger generation of students today. Thank you.
Bye.